Hello everyone, so my name is Sanalina Rayasmin Isabel and I'm going to answer the question from the course Critical Listening, the video about self-worth theory. The first question is, according to the speaker, why do people procrastinate even when they care about the task? So according to the speaker, people procrastinate because they associate their self-worth with their performance. So they fear that if they fail at the task, it will reflect poorly on their abilities and it turns lower their self-worth. And this procrastination becomes a self-defense mechanism. And then the second question is, what does the self-worth theory explain about the connection between performance, ability, and self-worth? So self-worth theory explains that people often tie their self-worth to their abilities and performance. So if someone believes their abilities are low, they may fear attempting difficult tasks because failure will confirm those negative beliefs and damage their self-worth. And conversely, if they succeed, they may feel relief but not truly change their self-worth significantly. And then the third question, how does the speaker describe the role of fear of failure and perfectionism in procrastination? So the speaker explained that fear of failure and perfectionism are major drivers of procrastination. So people who fear failure may procrastinate to avoid the risk of experiencing a painful failure. And perfectionists may procrastinate because they fear not being able to meet their very high standard and leading them to feel anxious and overwhelmed. And then the fourth question is, what are some of the strategies suggested by the speaker to overcome procrastination? So while the provide content doesn't explicitly mention suggest strategy, but based on self-worth theory, some relevant strategy might include like detaching self-worth from performance, so focus on values and qualities that are unrelated to achievement. Uh, and then setting realistic goals, like avoiding setting standards that are impossible to achieve. And then accepting failure as a part of the learning process and viewing failure as an opportunity to grow and learn rather than as a reflection of self-worth. And then practicing self-worth compassion, so being kind and understanding toward yourself when facing difficulties or failures. And then fifth questions, why do you think procrastination is so common among university students in Indonesia? And give a few real examples. So procrastination is common among Indonesian university students due to several factors. First is academic pressures. So the competitive education system creates high pressure to succeed and triggering fear of failure. And then lack of time management skills. So many students lack of effective skills for managing time and tasks. And like me too. And then technological distractions. Social media and online entertainment offer a constant distractions. And then relaxed culture in some cases. So there's a relaxed attitude towards deadline and academic responsibility. So the real example is like a student postpone working on their thesis until close to the deadline because they fear not being able to write a perfect thesis. And then a group of students delay working on presentation until the night before because they prefer spending time on social media or playing games. And this is like so related to me. And then a student postpones studying for an exam because they feel overwhelmed by the amount of material to learn. And then sixth question is, the speakers say procrastination is not a weakness, but a form of self-protection. Do you agree or disagree, and explain why? So, yes, I agree with the statement that procrastination can be form of self-protections from a psychological perspective. So, procrastination is an often way to avoid negative emotion like fear of failure, anxiety, or feeling inadequate by procrastinating. So a person can avoid facing these feelings temporarily. And then seventh question, how do Indonesian students usually talk about procrastination? As a joke, a problem, or something normal? And what does that say about student culture here? So Indonesian students often talk about procrastination as a mix between a joke and a normal problems. So they might make jokes about how often they procrastinate or how they work best under deadline pressure. However, they also acknowledge that it is a problem that can cause stress and poor academic result. This indicate that there's is a fairly common culture of a procrastination among Indonesian students, but there is also an awareness that it is not a healthy habit. And then a question, if you could change one thing about your study habit to reduce procrastination, what would it be and why? So if I could change one thing about my study habits, I will focus more on breaking down large tasks into smaller, so more manageable tasks. And often I feel overwhelmed by large and complex assignments, which leads me to procrastinate. So by breaking tasks into smaller and more concrete steps, I will feel more motivated to start and complete each step, this reducing the tendency to procrastinate. And then the last question, 9. And the talk end with a quote, may your choice reflects your hopes, not your fears. What does this mean to you personally as a learner? So this quote is very meaningful to me as a learner, and it reminds me to let the fear of failure or inadequacy prevent me from pursuing my learning goals. So instead, I should make choice based on my hopes or for growth and learning and achieving my full potential. This means taking risks, trying new things, and not being afraid of making mistakes. So that's all my answer from the 9 questions. Thank you for watching and bye bye.